What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 115 of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast. Thanks for listening. And if you like this episode, please subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends, or click on the support link in this episode's description. Your donation of any amount could change a life. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. When we come back, we'll get into this episode entitled Fathers. Welcome back to episode 115 of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast entitled Fathers. Well, I just want to start out by saying I normally don't do episodes geared to a certain time of the year, but this one's dropping the week of Father's Day, which is coming up. So I thought I'd have our group talk about some stuff with their dads. So I want to welcome my guys back from the U.S., South Africa, and Australia. And guys, here's the question I've got for today. Two parts. The first one, what do you think about this statement? Dad, I hope to become even half the man you were. And the second one, actually, I feel like half a person, still doing immature things. When will I ever grow up? Harry, would you like to start us off today? Sure, David. For the first one, my dad died very young due to alcohol abuse. He was a brilliant and lovable person, drunk or sober. Just had a bad time with my alcoholic mom, who was the total opposite of him. So I don't wish to follow his path. So I started my own path and became someone he couldn't become. And as far as the second one, I have grown up now in my recovery and life. No more selfish, irresponsible behavior. I have become a person youngsters look up to. I feel completed now as a role model. Wow, that's awesome, Harry. And props to you for the growth that you're having in your recovery. Ben, what do you think of these questions? David, the thought, Dad, I hope to become even half the man you were, does make sense to me now that I'm 42 years old. I didn't see it growing up, though. It seems like when I entered my adolescent stage from about 14 years old until I was about 25 years old, there seemed to be some kind of wedge between myself and my dad. It wasn't hate or disdain, but just a sense of me thinking he didn't understand me. And I think him raising two more kids, plus trying to keep food on the table, thinking I don't have time to try and figure my son out. With that said, though, now on the other side of the fence, I see the incomprehensible sacrifice he made day in and day out for our family, not only to keep food on the table, but to stay sober, because he struggled with massive alcohol addiction himself in his teens. However, I know my dad would say, "Don't think anything great of me. Had it not been for Jesus, I would have been dead." So all that said, I'm really glad that my dad has also helped me now to get a healthy perspective on what it means to be sober and living as a Christian man. And as far as the second question, David, I tend to lean towards the optimistic side of things when it comes to my perspective, simply because the world is so full of negativity that it almost seems like you have to force yourself to see the positive sometimes. With that said, I think it's, of course, healthy to realize we all still have a little growing up to do, and there will always be some immaturity lingering around the hallways of our heart. But at the end of the day, I think it's wise for us to celebrate our successes. I think one of the biggest reasons we feel incomplete and defeated is we never take the time to celebrate our successes. And I think it also depends on how you define the word celebrate. For me, I think it's important to surround yourself with people that celebrate you and not tolerate you. People who celebrate you will discuss your blind spots with you, not to make you feel less, but to help you identify them so you can become better, and hopefully you will do the same for them. So yes, often I feel like I may have half-assed a lot and I need to just grow up. But I'm grateful for people in my life, including my dad actually, who don't let me sit in quicksand very long. Soon they're pulling me out, and I'd like to think I'm doing the same for them. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Thanks, Ben. That was awesome. Dante, what do you say? Well, for the first question, Dave, one of the many solid things about my dad and my relationship was that he was always physically there. He was home every evening. He was at all my events growing up as a kid, especially the sporting events as I grew older. My dad was never much of one for talking or giving any kind of fatherly instruction to his son, the way you would expect, but he did have some wisdom and insight, and I knew I was loved, disciplined, and cared for. And those are attributes that I want to follow through with my own children. And as far as growing up, the second question, I definitely needed more guidance and instruction as a younger person. I was overall a good kid, but did manage to get myself into trouble from time to time. It is amazing how children need both equally love and appropriate discipline. I say appropriate because some parents get that out of line and are quite inappropriate, and how they discipline their children, whether being over-authoritarian or even physically abusive. There are a lot of attributes about my dad's personality that I would never want to repeat. Primarily, complete lack of personal and self-confidence and lack of discipline. I feel some of the things that I no longer do or have matured from happened for me 5 to 10 years later than most of my friends. I think it's wise to see your parents for who they are. Love and respect them as broken people, just as I am. It's not always the easiest thing to do because so much of what comes from your dad is ingrained in you, and emotionally, I felt not able to be able to walk through things pragmatically. So I'm a work in progress. Yeah, Dante, I think we're all that work in progress, so I appreciate your honesty there. Eddie? Well, David, this has been a difficult topic to relate to or to comment on because myself and my 3 siblings, we grew up without our fathers around. On top of that, my grandmother had to raise us as well as her 13 kids in the same 3-bedroom house. So fatherhood came from my gran, as well as my uncles and aunts. So we grabbed whatever we could from a majority of alcoholics in the house. Hence, we ventured into the community and latched on to older boys with bad habits, and the rest is history. Then I became a dad myself, struggled with how to discipline and engage with my kids. Took some years to finally get it a bit right, and I'm still learning every day. So I never had a dad to teach me. I figured it all out on my own with help from bits of family and friends along the way. Then grace. Now my focus is trying to show my kids what a dad is supposed to be in a home, breaking that curse of the fatherless generation, moving forward. And I think, as far as the second one, the attitude of that's just how I am, take it or leave it, is still a sign of immaturity. As an adult, it's our responsibility to figure out which of your traits are toxic and are negatively impactful on other people, especially the ones you love, and then eventually learn how to fix them. At some point, we all got to start making ourselves better individuals. If you truly believe you don't have anything to change about yourself, even at the very least, the worst in you, well, people will have to deal with it. So then, if you have those attitudes, I'm sorry, but you're still stuck as a child. Wow. Deep, deep statements there, and I appreciate that so much. Charlie, what do you think about these two questions? Well, the first one makes me think of my dad and how I felt like I could never measure up to him. He could do anything and do it well. He was super strong, never let me win at anything, and so even my friends liked him better than me. He did whatever he wanted, no matter who said otherwise. No matter how broke or how much money he had, he was always the same. But he was also open and actively using drugs and alcohol in front of me since I could remember. It was just a part of life. I was always unable to measure up to him in anything because I was a kid and wasn't much like him, as I didn't always live with him. But as I got older, I got stronger. But I still couldn't win because I would be put down forcefully. Then came the drugs and drinking for me. And I realized that became how I impressed my dad for the first time. It was the only way I could win in our family. Whoever drank someone under the table was the real man. So I had arrived, and not in a good way. And as far as the second question, David, today, even though I'm 42, I often feel like the kid in the room who can measure up and that nobody respects. I always feel like I got to prove myself in new teams, groups, work, whatever the gatherings are. I feel like I'm just growing up all the time. So I don't have to look up for so long to find where I fit, but I struggle trying to fit in. And I feel like I'm acting childish, or I get a trauma response. And so, quite frankly, it's my faith that holds me together, and I turn to Jesus to help me grow up. Wow, that's awesome. I really appreciate that, Charlie. Glenn, would you like to close us out today? Sure, David. My relationship with my father was comparable to a veritable war of attrition, of wills. I was being broken down steadily over an extended period, and being possessed of a strong will myself, my response was initially hurtfulness, which progressed to anger and eventually open rebellion. However, aside from this, the most unfortunate turn of events and all the negative behavior, deep down inside, I still had an enormous admiration and respect for my father. But I didn't even know how to express it or how he could receive it. And, my father was a very capable and well-respected individual in town. And he applied himself with much endeavor and initiative wherever he wanted to. Everyone thought he was a nice guy with a strong sense of right and wrong. He was the friendly and helpful guy. I wanted to be like him, even though my belief in myself and my abilities was weakened and negative, to say the very least. I have mainly, though, found in a new faith in God, along with my other experience, I found the worthiness within myself in a growing belief in my capabilities, and may I say wisdom that I'm gaining as I'm constantly learning. However, I realize there are long-held habits, negative in nature, that I still struggle with along the harsh judgment that I bring on myself afterwards. Anger is a prominent one in my life, and although I'm focusing on eradicating this destructive emotion, I do know it is a process, and importantly, I need God to be my healer and my source of power as I try to improve. Wow, guys, thank you so much for all of your honesty in this, and I hope this gives our listeners some thoughts about their relationships with their fathers as we're coming up on Father's Day, and also how we can grow with the good we remember from him and grow beyond the negative things. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast. If you would like to join an online group or get one-on-one counseling to help you in your healing from the father stuff, please message me on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfromatod@gmail.com, or go to my website www.fromatod.org and click on the contact page. You can also keep in touch with what we're doing in From A to D by following me on Instagram at davidfromatod. Tune in Monday for our next episode, and as always, stay safe and stay strong.